It is 30 minutes after 11 o'clock. You're waking up this morning. It's 107.7. You're waking up in the morning where a coup attempt has been thwarted in Turkey. And the Prime Minister is asserting that he is back in charge. Over 3,000 army personnel have been arrested, none of them being the actual hierarchy of the army, a lot of them being middle-level commanders and so on. So the world is just turning on, and the Middle East madness continues the way it is. It is our fortune to have with us this morning the Minister of Social Development and Family Service, Honorable Cherrie-Ann Critchlow-Cockburn. We are talking about some of the areas in what I call her super ministry. And in the area of disabilities, persons with disabilities, there is something that ministry is responsible for, taking care of them. They are attempting to do that, but there are some obstacles. Please explain, or hurdles, as it were.
Yes, Mr. Bishop. Approximately 4% of our population are persons who are deemed to be living with a disability. So that is roughly 52,000 persons. So a decision was taken to construct a national enrichment center. This was a center whereby persons with disabilities could have gone, have assessments done, do exercises, generally have a center whereby provision could be made for them so that they could be properly integrate them into society. Unfortunately, what we have discovered is that center was built not according to design specifications and without the necessary statutory approvals. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services would have spent upwards of $19 million to have that center constructed, and we are unable to use the center. In an effort to determine is there any sort of redress that could happen through the legislative process, we were informed not really, because no contracts were done. $19 million of our state funds was spent based on an MOU.
Memorandum of Understanding.
That's correct. No contract was done. So what we have now found is that we are unable to provide our persons living with disabilities with a center where they can have the assessment done. Persons living with autism need special conditions under which to operate. The center was supposed to provide for all of that. That cannot happen. Even the manner in which the gymnasium was built, you need to have beams so persons could be strapped and hoisted so that they can do their exercises. That was not provided for. So while I would have given a commitment about 2 months ago because I was informed that we could have operationalized it, we have since discovered that in the absence of the statutory approvals and it not being built to design brief, we will not be able to utilize that center anytime soon.
That is one of the throwbacks. All right. I want to stay the food card. If you forgive me to go back at that again.
Sure.
And I'm staying on that because there are just so many areas of this. You mentioned something that's important to me. When we talk about the food card is a temporary accommodation, accepted. And we are trying to equip folks that they can move on to a better social standing via their own labor, which is to say we're upping their educational level or their training, vocational as it were. Do we have any mechanism? Because oftentimes I hear these wonderful plans, and this is not to say that I'm hearing it from you, I'm just making a general statement. We hear these plans, good intention, but then when you ask what is your success rate, how do you measure this? Nobody can tell me that the mechanism is in place to measure these successes, to measure how many people came out who initially applied, how many have moved out of the program as a result of what we're doing. There is no measurement. Is there any such thing in this case? And I know that you've only been there for a year. I understand that.
We would have, Mr. Bishop, I would have asked the same question. No. There are some mechanisms, there are some things in place to assist those persons. For example, there's supposed to be a parallel system operating whereby some of those persons are provided with training, some of them are assisted in securing jobs, but the data is not available to indicate what has been our success rate. So there is an absence of that data. So while the system would have been working parallel and some persons would have been trained, some would have been assisted in securing jobs, some may have been granted loans or grants to assist them with their own business, the data is not readily available.
Minister Cockburn, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's really amazing to me that half the times, almost the same thing with the Central Statistical Office, nobody seems to see a need to have documentation as to what has been done, but everybody expects to have a result that they can account for. And usually when you say, show me how you do it, I tell people all the time, you can disagree with me if you want, just, justify it. You can't justify it. I don't really want to hear it.
But that is going to change, because we have indicated we are implementing systems whereby each division is required to report every month. We are moving to an evidence-based and data-driven decision-making system. So each unit is required to provide that level of data and to report on it every month. So a lot of the problems that we would have had, a lot of those are supposed to be diminished substantially because of that.
Right. It is not part of your ministry, but the same thing with URP, the same thing with anything. If you have a situation where you're telling me the intent of this is to make it short term, so I don't understand it's a political handout. Right. And that is necessary. I mean, that's a whole different talk show, but I always think it's necessary. You got to give a little something. So, and while I understand that, say that's what it is, but don't tell me that you're trying to graduate people out of a situation and then you spend the money on it, and then you have nothing to show me for it.
Right.
Earlier, I asked you the question about the socially displaced people, and there seemed to be some confusion, because one of the things I think we need to understand, I called repeatedly, and I had him here, thank you, Your Grace, the mayor of Port of Spain, to deal with the issue of homelessness. Whose responsibility is this really? Is there a case of shared responsibility? Make clear to our listeners what it is, because when I see the folks down at Brunch Square, I'm going like, I want to talk to the mayor, and I am thinking that is the begin all and the end all. Then I go to your ministry and I say, oh yeah, you were responsible for that too. It's a case of even the public understanding what we are doing. Differentiate the responsibilities for me, please.
It is a shared responsibility, because if you look at what needs to happen with the homeless or the displaced persons, there's a responsibility for the Ministry of Health, because you are treating with persons who may have mental issues. You are treating with the police service, Ministry of National Security, because to remove them, you need to have the police service involved. Then you have the Ministry of Social Development. We have to perform that social role. And then you have the city corporation. But what needs to happen is that all these parties need to come together so we can once and for all define the roles and responsibility of each member of the team.
Is there a shared database? This is a comedy. Is there a shared database? Because I remember I am looking at representatives, those who are saying that they represent the socially displaced from different organizations, and they had some wild numbers. I believe it was before a joint select committee, I think it was. And I had numbers going all over the place, including some numbers that seem as though we got them last night. We didn't tell you about it? Oh, okay. Is there a database to tell us exactly how many displaced people, how many street dwellers, specifically street dwellers, we have in the country?
I do not believe we have that figure. What happens, our officers would go out on the streets at night and they try to do a head count. But if you know how these persons operate and how they move, today you may check them in San Juan and tomorrow they are in Port of Spain, or they will move and they may go up to Aruca. So there has to be a proper system put in place and a responsibility assigned as to who is responsible for identifying our citizens who live on the street and are socially displaced.
Varying head counts is what we got. I thought, listening to the JSC meeting, that they needed some head counts too. Anyway, what are the short-term measures in place for dealing for those who qualify under the umbrella of your ministry? What are the short-term measures in place to assist them, medium and long-term?
These are the socially displaced
persons, yes.
Okay. In the short term, what we do, we go out on the street there and we seek to convince them to voluntarily be removed from the street. Once that happens, there's a process. We take them in, we do the assessments, we determine where they need to be placed, to be rehabilitated. They go through that system and then they are reintegrated into society. But what we need to understand, because people may oftentimes say, but they remove 10 persons from the street and I see them back there in a week's time. There is nothing in place to keep them there. So what we oftentimes find is after you would have brought them, done the assessment, you would have cleaned them up, provided whatever medical treatment was required. Once they feel they are okay, they can just walk out and get back onto the street.
So we do a qualifying thing to ensure that they are put in the right place. Do we not? Should we not have in place, I ask of you, a panel or something to look at these people to say, I mean, you can leave or you cannot leave. What is that? A legal imprisonment? I mean, if I decide to do that, I'm just asking.
It would be legal imprisonment. Yes, it would be. The only persons who we can keep are those who would have gone before the court, and the court would have given them the option, either you go for rehabilitation or you are jailed. So they would be mandated to be within the system, let's say for 3 months or 6 months. And even then, you would need to go back to the courts and let them know, okay, they would have vacated.
Okay. It is, yes, it's interesting that you say that, because it's much more hurdlesome than I thought. And I think it would be a lot more than people think, because oftentimes you hear folks say exactly that. I'm passing into Port of Spain, I see these people here. Why can't you pick them up? Why can't you put a place for them? Is there such a thing as, are we overcrowded in our shelters? I mean, it is true you say that you go, you do the check with them, if they qualify, you put them in, and they can voluntarily move. We're clear on that. Question is, if there was the ability to take 80% of them off the streets, do we have the facilities to accommodate them? Or is there need for us to set to them?
Well, what would have happened in the past, there are available facilities where we can pay to have them placed. So while they may not be owned by the ministry, there is sufficient accommodation to have these persons housed. And just to let you, Mr. Bishop, and the public know, when these persons are assessed, they are assessed by the relevant professionals. So whether it's a mental health doctor, nurse, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, they are assessed by professionals who determine what is required.
Well, listeners, you would find, of course, that I'm taking the minister in a lot of different places because she has, as I said, a super ministry. That's how I'm going to refer to you from here on. And a lot of folks are losing their jobs right now. A lot of folks are losing their jobs. Is there something that your ministry can do to assist with the number of people who are being laid off right now and looking for some sort of, food card is one option, I know that. Any other options they can look to your ministry
for? Well, apart from what currently exists, for example, short-term rental assistance, the food card, that type of thing, what has happened on a broader scale? The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services has been working very closely with the Ministry of Labour in an effort to determine the numbers that would have been retrenched and what the requirements are. We would have also embarked on what we call our social dialogues. It was a series of consultation. It was held in San Fernando, Chaguanas, up at UWI, and in Tobago, where we would have invited all of the NGOs, all of the relevant stakeholders to come forward and indicate to us what are the issues, what is the assistance that is needed so that we can now develop a social mitigation plan that is going to cushion the effect of all of this retrenchment and the economic downturn.
Because at the end of the day, we are looking at a lot of people with mental disturbance, mental problems as a result of what is going on here, and an increase in that homeless population, unless we deal with this the minute it occurs and try to find some relief for people.
Well, I believe that has been happening, because together with the Ministry of Labour, when we would have hosted that symposium down in Couva, we had set up a booth treated with persons who felt they needed counseling and that type of thing. And we have given the information out there so persons are aware that they can contact the ministry. We would send social workers from the family services to meet with them and assist them in whatever way is necessary.
That is good. I am going to ask you what I always ask my guests, because we can come in with a lot of areas, and then, as you said earlier, there are many areas that we don't know, that you can provide clarity to us on. What are the three most misunderstood areas of your ministry that folks have in the public domain, and give us some clarity on them is the way I'm coming.
It is a bit difficult to identify the three, but one, the food card.
Yes, which we spent.
Yes, people believe that a food card is just there for the taking. So we would have clarified the situation with the food card. In terms of the senior citizens grant, you yourself may have heard persons say, but once I am 60 or over 65, I should be granted a pension.
I have heard that. Why shouldn't they think that?
Mr. Bishop, the government is attempting to assist persons who are in need of assistance. I do not believe any government should or would provide that sort of assistance to a person who would have worked, is receiving a pension from their employer, or they would have made provisions themselves and they have an annuity or some sort of pension plan.
Also known as means testing.
Yes. So the intention really is to ensure that our elderly, who for whatever reason they may have never worked in their life, or they may have been supported by their husband who would have died, and need some sort of financial assistance from age 65 onward to ensure that that person can live comfortably. Remember, the whole intention behind social services is to provide a safety net for our poor and our vulnerable. It is not to provide every citizen with a pension. I think that is one misconception that is out there.
Gotcha. There's a danger sign before this question. I'm going to ask you anyway. The National Insurance Board, is that part of something that your ministry work with? I've heard a lot of people, a lot of senior citizens, and the reason I ask it is because it kind of borders, because they're aged citizens who are saying, I have done my NIS business, I've done everything I'm supposed to do, now I can't get anything done. And they ask, where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? What do we do? But so they fall into that unique position because they are aged, which is under yours, and at the same time, the NIB, which is under somebody else's.
Right. Well, with the national insurance system, they would have contributed. So they are entitled to their pension once they would have met the requirements. Okay? I know at the NIB they're supposed to have things in place where persons should be able to get their pension in a timely manner. I'm not sure what is happening. At the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services now, this is a non-contributory pension, because this is a pension that is granted based on age, based on how long you would have lived in the country, and income. If your income is in excess of $5,000, which is the ceiling that we use, you would not be eligible for the senior citizens grant.
All right. I can thank you very much for coming in this morning. There are a number of areas there that I thought you made very clear to us, and I am truly appreciative of it, that you took the time to come out this Sunday. I wish you the very best rest of the week. Please, if possible, do not put me on your banned list. I may be calling that number again as need dictate.
Mr. Bishop, I was very happy to be here because it presented me with an opportunity, as you indicated, to clarify a lot of things, because we recognize that quite a large percentage of the population are not aware of what we do at the ministry and what are the qualifying criteria. So thank you very much for having me.
And I thank you so much for coming. You have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you.